unprecedented time, uncharted waters. I'm sure you have heard all those adjectives. And the best succinct way to describe the situation as well as what you may anticipate. I mean, there are many unknowns. We don't know the path of the virus, whether there will be a second wave, whether a vaccine will be discovered, whether as Germany reopens, remember Europe went through this before, so they are opening their economy before the US, whether Germany can teach us how to go about it, or maybe the state of Georgia as they are beginning to open. So a lot of unknowns and a lot of things to learn from. So let me put up a PowerPoint slide here. So I'm gonna use my technology and let me see if I can pull this up. There we go. All right, so the economy was doing quite well. The very first part of this chart shows the Great Recession of essentially 10 years ago when we had the foreclosure crisis. Arizona certainly felt the impact of the foreclosure back then. Given that we are facing a large unemployment, at least temporarily, the question becomes whether or not are we going to face a repeat of 08, 09. Do you need to change your business model to perhaps go into foreclosure specialist area? Or are we fundamentally different? And what I can say is that the economy has been expanding nicely over the past 10 years since the Great Recession. And the 2020 looked to be a very good year in January and February before the most unexpected event of the virus essentially hitting the economy into a wall. Or I should say that the government imposed lockdown is putting the economy into a wall. So the 2020, at least for the second quarter, will be quite ugly in terms of all economic data, whether automobile sales. I think the home sales will be down roughly 30% from 1 year before. It could even be higher. The GDP forecast is for something like minus 30%, unheard of negative. But there will be a rebound in the third and fourth quarter. The second half rebound is unclear as to how strong it will be and whether or not it can make up for some of the losses that happened in the second quarter. But we are certainly in this uncharted territory. If somehow vaccine is discovered, hallelujah, we are all back to normal. If we need to practice social distance protocol, South Korea, interestingly, people are going to restaurants all the time. The street is busy, but everyone is 6 feet apart, at least the strangers. And apparently they have flattened the curve, so there does not appear to be any increase. So maybe we just follow the social distance protocol and that will be sufficient to get the economy back up and running. The Arizona market, this is the jobs, shows that there was a little hump in the middle. That is the last time we had the strong job gains from construction boom in essence, because the subprime lending led to huge demand for housing. But when that subprime mortgages, which overstretched people's budget, blew up, we had that foreclosure crisis, prices declining about 30, 40%, depending upon the neighborhood. But the job recovery, as one sees, has been solid since then. Arizona is one of the fastest growing states in the country. You get many Californians moving into the region, and also people from, say, Chicago, Midwest, moving into the region. Clearly, when you go see the Arizona Cardinals football game, you can see many Chicago Bears sign out there, probably implying many Midwesterners have settled in Arizona. But the growth in job partially reflect the fact many people want to move into Arizona. So one of the faster job creating states in the country before the pandemic. So what happens now? Because the unemployment insurance filing is just pretty much off the chart. So you can see there are small dots. US is dynamic. So there's always people who lose job, they file for unemployment insurance. Then look at the mid-March numbers just piling up and up and up. Maybe only good sign here is that at least the number of people who are filing for the first time, at least that number beginning to diminish. It is still large. So total number of unemployed is, you have to add up those bars all together. So it is quite sizable. One of the things that NAR, and Mary knows this very well, which is that NAR advocated for the realtors to qualify for the unemployment insurance because this disruption, again, is caused by the government imposed lockdown. The entrepreneurs, all the American workers were hard at work before this shutdown. So we wanted to assure that people who are disrupted get a temporary relief until the economy reopens. So please look into the unemployment insurance, or just call it a disaster relief, because I know the realtors want to get back into business rather than picking up a check, but there's temporary disruption. We advocate it, and for the first time ever, realtors do qualify for unemployment insurance. If the Arizona state has not yet set up the system, computer system to pay it out, it will be retroactive because they have to reprogram the system to make the realtors qualify. So during this temporary disruption, please tap into the financial resources. NAR advocated hard for this measure. Now, as related to Arizona specific, this is what it looks like. So for the 3 weeks, you see a huge increase and then begin to taper down. Just like in the coronavirus, how many new cases? So you can consider this to be new cases. And given that number of newly unemployed people is coming down, is implying that very soon we are going to have this surge in unemployment, then flattening out, and then possibly go down once the economy reopens and the stimulus spending bill begins to kick in. Stimulus spending bill is quite massive. I mean, it is the largest ever in the US. And the purpose is to say that people who have lost income, that should not suffer greatly. And hence, most of their lost income should be replaced. In few cases, say a cashier working at Macy's or some department store who has lost job, their unemployment check could be higher than the wage they were earning. So this is how generous the unemployment insurance benefit is currently today. But for many people, I mean, it's not a full replacement, but it should be a replacement of a good portion of people's income. Here's two interesting charts that is not Arizona. One is New Orleans unemployment rate, and one is New York City. Why did I put up these two charts? Because that little spike in unemployment rate that you see in New Orleans is related to Hurricane Katrina. So Hurricane Katrina came in, unemployment rate shot up from 5% to 15% overnight. Essentially small business owners, all related to tourism industry, all the flights were canceled. So very similar to today's pandemic period as to who is really losing jobs. But notice how quickly the unemployment rate went down. And the reason why it went down is because of massive disaster relief money that went into New Orleans. And in fact, home prices in New Orleans after Katrina increased. And the following year, it increased again. So if the disaster money is there, it can quickly get the economy to normalize quickly. So the massive size of the stimulus bill is that once the economy reopens, people have the spending power to get the economy get going. New York City is related to the September 11th event. So it will be that first little surge that you see in unemployment. It went from 4% to about 7%, and then it began to come down again. And also similarly, much disaster relief money went into New York City after that horrific September 11th events. And in the case of September 11th, it's also the fear factor. Hurricane Katrina, whether one was impacted by the water, that was immediate impact. But the fear factor in New York, when you go to a restaurant, you did not know somebody would carry a bomb. So there was that fear factor roaming around that halted some of the normal business activity. But the New York area also saw a home price increases in the years after September 11th. One of the big reasons for that was mortgage rate have declined significantly, and consequently, people with secure employment wanted to take advantage of the low interest rates. Today, you can say unemployment is very high, Good thing that we do have that unemployment insurance temporarily, but about 60 or 70% of people with jobs have secure employment. And what they are facing is that 3% unemployment, 3% mortgage rate, historically low. So once the economy reopens, maybe there are buyers who want to take advantage of those low interest rates, given that they consider themselves about 60 or 70% of the labor force with secure employment. Just want to give you a historical fact. There's nothing to say that current situation would be the same or would be the different, but at least I want to illustrate what happened in the more localized disaster. Today, national pandemic is nationwide phenomena. So before the pandemic, the home sales were rising steadily over the years. And you see that at the beginning, the big hump, sort of at the beginning part of the chart, those are the subprime lending and the crash that occurred. And then since then, you see a steady recovery. So the question about foreclosures, should we anticipate large foreclosure in the near future? And answer is no. Why? First, we don't have the same condition as 10 years ago. What do I mean by that? First, subprime lending that stretch people's budget, that funny, explosive mortgages are no longer around. People who took out a mortgage, they all met the credit standards, they stayed within their budget. So mortgages are much sounder. Second, back 10 years ago, home builders went wild. They're just producing anything, just empty ground. They were putting homes up and hope someone will purchase. Today, we have undersupply. In fact, if there was any complaint, whether it was in Flagstaff, Phoenix, Tucson, is that there was lack of inventory before the pandemic, especially the mid-price and below price points. So we had a shortage of inventory, not an oversupply like 10 years ago. And furthermore, today, during the pandemic, there's even fewer inventory. So we went from shortage to even a more acute shortage. I know the buyers are not out there, but once the economy reopens, we expect many of the sellers who have been delaying listing their home to reappear. And as they reappear, many of the sellers are also the buyers of a home. They're either trading up, looking for different distance, different location. So as the inventory began to rise with the reopening of the economy, the buyer's demand is already there because many of the sellers are also buyers of properties. And some of the migration from, say, California and Illinois that had halted, that will restart, which means that demand will flow into the Arizona market. Inventory, I mentioned repeatedly, very short, even fewer inventory in the current pandemic period. What about government policy? Well, the Federal Reserve has gone in all at once. In the past years, Federal Reserve took several months to bring the interest rate down. This time, given that it is a government-imposed economic shutdown, Federal Reserve said they're going to go in all at once, which thereby they lower the interest rates, or at least the Fed funds rate, to zero. If that happens, that generally drags down government borrowing rate. And if that brings the government borrowing rate down, it makes the mortgage rate cheaper. So here's the line on the mortgage rates. So the blue is the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Red is the government borrowing rate on 10-year treasury. And you see that 10-year treasury has hit an all-time low. Both move very synchronized pattern. But if there is any sort of opening of a gap, it is the current period where treasury yield went down, but the mortgage rate, yes, it is very low, but it could be even lower, meaning that I think the mortgage rate could even go down to, say, 2.8% or 2.9% from current 3.3%. That is a possibility, not a guarantee, because the gap is a little wider than normal. But I should say that the reason why the gap may be a little wider than normal is that refinance demand is just simply too strong, and many of the lenders simply don't have the staff to handle all this paper demand. And once the refinance demand begins to dry off, then the interest rate on the home purchase may begin to come down as they are looking for new businesses. So just wait a month or two, and you may actually have a mortgage rate under 3%. Hopefully by that time, economy can safely reopen to some degree at that stage. Currently, the jumbo market is not functioning well. It doesn't have the government guarantee. And I know, Mary has been with me at many of the Washington functions where NAR lobby for the backing of the Fannie and Freddie with the government guarantee. And this is one illustration. Any mortgages that doesn't have the backing of Fannie and Freddie means that it is outside of the conforming, and therefore the jumbo market is not working. It requires much higher credit score, extremely high, and the down payment, meaning about 20% minimum down payment to get that jumbo mortgages. So not functioning well for the interim. We are talking with the Treasury Department, we're talking to the members of Congress to address this liquidity issue in the jumbo market to assure that people who are in the high-end market also have the privilege of seeing a very low interest rates. But right now, temporarily, it is not working. I mentioned about undersupply of housing. Builders simply cannot snap a finger and say, here, we have 30 more homes. It will take time to build homes, which means that housing shortage that was in place back in February, most of last year, are still in place. So we will not have that oversupply situation that leads to price decline. The price increases have been steady, and I see no reason why there could be a price decline even in the current environment. One best illustration of that is, assume you have a buyer trying to buy a home today. If they think they can get a bargain, deep discount, well, good luck to them, because it's going to be really hard. This is just to illustrate that prices are not moving downward. So there is always a normal price negotiation that occurs, but generally speaking, homes that are sold, the median price this year is a little bit higher compared to last year, and there's no indication of any oversupply that will be coming into the market. Coronavirus impact. Because this situation is so unique, we decide to take a survey about the sentiment of the buyer and sellers. First part is on the right side, the seller sentiment. Are the sellers reducing the price of their home, listed price? Or if they are planning on bringing their property in 2 months, by the way, many realtors say their potential clients are saying they don't want to list in April and May during the pandemic, they are going to wait until June and July to list. So when they list their home, are they thinking of the price they were experiencing before the pandemic or a little lower? And there appears to be absolutely no panic among sellers. They're saying, I am not going to reduce prices, 72%. Very few saying that maybe a 5% reduction in price, but sellers are holding firm. What about the buyers? What are the buyers' expectations? First, buyers always want to pick up the property on the cheap, so you can anticipate they are reluctant to pay the list price. But 37% said they do not expect lowering of the price. 16% said it would be less than 5%, and other people anticipating a little larger discount. So there will be a little bit of a face-off between buyer and seller in terms of price negotiation, but I expect the winner will be sellers, because sellers are in a situation of housing shortage, so they really do not need to reduce price. Only area where there will be reduction in price is on the upper end market, luxury market, because of the stock market volatility. It has frightened some of the high wealth individuals, and furthermore, the mortgage interest is no longer fully deductible, as well as if you have a large property tax, one cannot deduct that full amount as people used to do a long time past. So the upper end market is hindered because of the stock market volatility, as well as changes in how much you can deduct on mortgage interest, as well as property tax. So the luxury end would be the only area where you may see some price softness or the buyers have advantage, but any mid-price and below, sellers will continue to have advantage over the buyers. And I would say that in 2020, you look at all the homes that are transacted all the way through December, and you will find that prices in the Phoenix, Tucson, nearly all places in Arizona, that prices will be modestly higher compared to 2019, even as we go through this pandemic period. Stimulus help, please try to tap into the resources if you qualify and if you can. Small Business Administration loans, it is called loan, but often you do not have to pay back if you meet much of the criteria. So this would be for many brokers who may need a loan. The unemployment insurance that I mentioned, it is enhanced with $600 additional per week. I believe nationwide average unemployment insurance check would be something like $1,100 per person. So just imagine that's like $4,400 per month. That person will be receiving this enhanced unemployment insurance. And that's why I mentioned that for few individuals like cashiers who may have lost the job, their unemployment check could actually be higher than the wages they were earning before. But it's only limited in duration, so it's not permanent. I think this enhanced unemployment insurance finishes in July. So at least up to July, they get this enhanced unemployment insurance. People who are facing financial hardship, they can skip on their mortgage payments for most mortgages. So don't just miss out on mortgage payment. Call your mortgage servicer and say you are in this situation. And most likely they will negotiate and said, okay, you can miss payment for the duration of the time that you don't have a job, up to 12 months. So at least this will prevent mortgage foreclosures from coming or home foreclosures. The missed payment is not free lunch. It will be tacked on at the end of the life of the loan. So somehow you have to sell your home, you will have less equity because you did not pay all the mortgages. So don't think that it is a free lunch. People who are able to make the payment, they should continue to make payment, but people who simply cannot miss it, and that additional payment will be just tacked on at the end of the life of the loan. The foreclosure freeze and the quantitative easing essentially to keep the mortgage rates very low. Let me show you this chart. I'm almost reaching towards the end. How is the government getting the money for unemployment check and all this stimulus measure? Well, they are spending on the budget deficit. So where is the government getting this borrowed money? Is that from Chinese government? Is it the German mutual funds? Where are they getting the money to finance the budget deficit? Put it very simply, today it is printing of the money. Federal Reserve is printing the money, handing over to the Treasury. Treasury is sending the checks over to Americans. It is needed to go over this pandemic period. And one other thing about printing money is if you print a lot of money, there will be high inflation. That's Econ 101. But America has this extraordinary privilege which no other country has. We have the US dollar. During the time of financial uncertainty, people want the dollar, meaning that we don't have to have inflation even as we print the money. But still, we have to ask the question, if we print a lot of money and so much money is floating around, especially when the economy reopens, will this cause inflation? And I would say maybe 5 years from now, 6 years from now, maybe we begin to see high inflation. For some of the younger generation, talk to your parents about 1970s. And in the 1970s, high inflation was very normal, 10% increases in food prices, everything rising food 10%. So if you want to hedge against inflation, what is the best way? Some people say buy gold. Gold is a very good hedge against inflation. Other people say real estate is always a good hedge because when prices rise, real estate prices also rise, which means your equity wealth is rising along with it. And if you happen to have mortgage, that monthly mortgage payment is fixed. It's not rising. So it will look like it's a very little payment over time. So you may begin to see people who want to buy real estate in future years just as a hedge against inflation. So that is a possibility given so much of the printing of the money. My last slide is the following. So my forecast overall, first, I think the big caveat, which is the title, highly uncertain. We don't know the path of the virus. We don't know the vaccine discovery, and let's hope for the best. but the second quarter pause button that we press will be unable to compensate. The stimulus package simply cannot compensate for the pause button that we press. So economy in 2020 could be down 3%, which would mean that total job losses could be about 4 million. It's not the 16 million, because most of the people who lost job will come back to their employment or new employment. Just consider hair salons. Will they be fully back in business once the economy reopens? And you say, yeah, they're going to hire people as before. What about dental offices? Yes. Daycare centers? Yes. So there are some industry they need to hire immediately once the economy reopens. But like airline industry or cruise ship industry, it may take multiple years to recover. So a negative in 2020, home prices holding steady, home sales more likely to be down about 10% overall from the year before. But 2021 will all be positive. I think the momentum of economic growth in the second half just simply carries over into 2021. And then the prices will again be rising. And home sales, there was a sizable pent-up demand. Just think about 2019, early part of 2020. Too many buyers, not enough supply. All that buying activity will be coming back as jobs are being created. So best to you, President Mary Roberts, thank you for inviting, and I will just stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Yoon. We did have a couple questions regarding the your forbearance on your loans, and is that going to affect your credit score? And also, go ahead.
So stimulus package was very fast. There may be some issues which we overlooked. I believe in the stimulus measure, it does make it clear that credit score would not be impacted for people who are losing jobs temporarily. But if there is some issue which we overlook, we're going to re-talk to the Congress and try to fix those issues.
And also, they're talking about that as soon as this is over, that those forbearance payments might be due. Have they changed their mind and they're all agreeing to put it on the back, or should you be worried in 3 months that they might want 3 months of payments all at one time?
So talk to your mortgage servicer. If it's a balloon payment all at once, try to say, no, that's difficult, and make it into the end of the life of the loan. Just pass it along. Because that's the Fannie and Freddie backed mortgage guidance, and many of the other mortgage servicers are trying to follow those guidance.
Okay. And then also we had a question regarding the unemployment insurance. So, you know, all of us as realtors, you just never know when you're going to get that next sale and what's in the next commission check. If you're collecting unemployment and you get a commission check, are you going to have to pay back all the unemployment you just got?
That question, I don't know definitively. All the information is in our website. So go to NAR and it will be much detail. And I will leave it at that because I have to go to New Jersey by Zoom interview. So thank you, President Roberts, for inviting me. And everyone, have a very good day.
We appreciate you. I just wanted to remind all the members that we do have the Arizona Association of Realtors has set up a COVID-19 helpline. So if you have any of these questions regarding unemployment, the PPP, in any of those things, the forbearance, we have set up a number. It's open Monday through Friday, 9:30 to 12, 9:30 to 12, and 2 to 4:30. It's free to every Arizona Realtor member. It's manned by the same people that do our legal hotline, which is for your brokers, but this is open to everybody. So it is on the AAR website, but the phone number is 833-431-INFO. That's for any of your questions that you can get legal questions regarding all of this. So just look at AAR online, and I appreciate everyone attending, and we'll try to get some more webinars out for you so that we can all be involved and we can all be informed during this time. Appreciate it.